The violinists played something light. Chopin, maybe. I didn't care enough to ask. Claire leaned in closer, her perfume hitting me before her voice. "Smile," she whispered, her breath a threat masked as affection. "Don't embarrass me." I adjusted the cuffs of my tailored jacket and forced a grin, the kind that makes your cheeks ache before your eyes catch up. Around us, people laughed at jokes I hadn't heard. Toasts were raised. Waiters poured aged wine into gold-rimmed glasses. But all I could think about was the way Brooke had looked at me that afternoon, the way her voice cracked when she said, "So this is it?" And I had nodded, like a coward. I had rehearsed the breakup a dozen times, practiced the right words, the right tone. But when the moment came, I froze. Not because I didn't love her. I did. But because Claire still had too many strings tied to me, and every one of them was barbed. "Jason, dear," Claire said sweetly, loudly enough for the table to hear. Her manicured fingers gently rested on my arm, possessive. "Tell Senator Walsh about our new foundation initiative." Right. I turned to the senator, a man who probably hadn't heard a no in 20 years. I spoke. My voice was calm, practiced. I played the role Claire had written for me long ago, but in my chest, something cracked, a silent fracture. Brooke had begged me to leave Claire, not for her. She never made it about herself, but for my own sanity. "You're not living, Jason," she had said. "You're surviving in a cage made of glass and guilt." And now, here I was, choking on silk napkins and lies. Across the table, Claire was laughing again. Elegant, respected, dead inside. Her hand slid off my arm and onto my thigh beneath the table. It was supposed to be seductive. It felt like ownership. I stared down at my untouched plate. Lobster tail and asparagus. Fancy food for people who forgot how to taste. In my mind, I saw Brooke walking away from me one last time. Her brown hair loose, eyes red, and her voice shaking. "I hope one day when it finally hurts enough, you'll realize you never needed her." But it didn't hurt. Not yet. Not here. Not with Claire beside me and 1,000 fake smiles watching. So I did what I always do. I smiled. It started with the campaign fundraiser. Back then, I didn't have money. Not like I do now. I was just another consultant in a rented blazer, eating shrimp cocktail off linen napkins I'd never be able to afford myself. But I had ambition, and Claire had connections. A dangerous combination, as it turned out. We met at one of her father's events, a rooftop mixer for political hopefuls and washed-up donors. I wasn't supposed to be there, but a friend slipped me in as his +1. I remember the wind tangling her blonde hair as she laughed too loud at something a man 3 times her age said. She didn't notice me, not at first. But I noticed her, Claire Wexley, daughter of William Wexley, heiress to a fortune that spanned real estate, pharmaceuticals, and old family secrets. She looked untouchable that night. Classic white dress, silver necklace, bare shoulders in December. I asked around. Everyone warned me. "She's poison in a wine glass," someone whispered. "She chews through people like paper," another said. "She's smart, too smart. Don't think you'll handle her." I didn't listen. I thought I could. Our first conversation was surgical. She asked about my background like she was scanning my resume. When I mentioned I had no family in state, she smiled slightly. Later I realized that wasn't sympathy. That was inventory. Still, I was flattered. When she said, "You're different," I believed her. God help me, I wanted to be different for her. The courtship was fast, dazzling. She sent gifts to my office, custom cufflinks, expensive watches. She got me invited to places I had no right being. Within weeks, I was standing next to senators. Within months, I had a new job, not a promotion, a transformation. Suddenly, I was someone. And Claire? Claire said she loved how I listened, how I didn't interrupt. That should have been a red flag. But love makes you interpret threats as compliments. She proposed to me. Not in private. Not with candles or trembling hands. No, she did it in front of 70 guests at a political gala, handed me a velvet box with a platinum band and said, "Let's build something no one else can touch." How do you say no when you're already inside the machine? The wedding was a performance. White orchids, violinists, gold leaf invitations. Guests I barely knew handed me blessings like business cards. Claire looked radiant, and I looked happy, I think. I remember thinking, this is the version of me she designed. This is the role I play now. During our vows, she whispered in my ear, "Don't ever embarrass me, ever." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. She didn't. The first year was quiet, cold, but structured. She managed our schedules like a CEO. She booked my doctor's appointments, chose my suits, hired my assistant. She handled our finances. I thought I should be grateful, but I started noticing small things. My emails would disappear. My phone would reset unexpectedly. She always knew when I was out later than expected. Always had a reason to check. Once, I left my phone on the bathroom counter while I showered. When I came out, she was scrolling through my messages. She didn't flinch. "Transparency builds trust," she said flatly. "Why would you care if you have nothing to hide?" I didn't answer. I just nodded. That's what I always did. Nod. Agree. Stay inside the lines. Years passed. I made money. I rose in rank. On paper, I had it all. A perfect wife. A perfect life. But somewhere along the way, I stopped laughing. Brooke came into my life much later, and not as a temptation, but as a mirror. She reminded me of who I used to be before Claire turned me into a polished version of myself. Before I learned to calculate every word before I spoke it. Before I started apologizing for needing space. But that's not today's story. Today's story is how I married a woman who turned me into a ghost, and I said, "Thank you for the privilege." I used to think control was loud, that it came with shouting, breaking plates, or doors slammed off hinges. I was wrong. Real control is quiet. It doesn't need to yell because it's already in your head. The first time Claire corrected how I spoke in public, it was over wine at a gala. "You pause too much," she said, handing me a flute of champagne. "Makes you sound unsure of yourself. Next time, breathe through your nose and say it like you already know they'll agree." I nodded. Of course I nodded. I was already learning how to shrink without leaving a shadow. Then came the stylist. "This is Bryce," she announced one day. "He'll be updating your wardrobe. I took the liberty of having your measurements sent over." My clothes disappeared overnight. Jeans, hoodies, the last flannel shirt my sister gave me before moving away. All replaced with Italian collars and custom-tailored suits. I should have said something, but she said, "Trust me, this is what winners wear." What? Later, she said the same thing when she picked out our condo downtown. I had liked our old apartment, small, a bit noisy, but it had windows that faced the sunrise. "This one has blackout curtains," she told me. "You sleep better, and it's easier to control lighting for photos." Claire always thought about optics, about how things looked from the outside. She never asked if I liked waking up with sunlight on my face. Over time, the control seeped into everything. My passwords, my calendar, my bank access. "Shared life means shared systems," she'd say with that smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I began to forget who I had been before her. She replaced my friends with networking opportunities, turned my gym time into personal training sessions she scheduled herself, and even curated what books I read. Once I ordered a novel she hadn't approved. Just a crime thriller. Something pulpy to escape into. When it arrived, she raised one eyebrow. "This is trash," she said, sliding it off the table. "If you want fiction, read something that improves your mind. I'll make a list." That book disappeared, like so many other things. My humor, my hobbies, my choices. She never screamed, never hit, never even raised her voice. She didn't have to. She had this way of looking at me, cool, disappointed, like I'd failed a test I didn't know I was taking. "Do better, Jason," she'd say, often with a sigh. "You have so much potential. Don't waste it being ordinary." She said ordinary like it was a curse word, and I started to believe her. I remember once walking by a mirror and not recognizing myself, not just because of the tailored jacket or the sleek haircut or the absence of stubble, but because my eyes were tired in a way I didn't have words for. That's when the headaches started, silent migraines behind my eyes. My doctor said it was stress. Claire said it was mental laziness. "Push through," she told me. "Everyone gets headaches. You don't see CEOs whining about them." So I did. I pushed through everything, until the pushing became permanent, until I stopped calling my sister back, until I forgot how I used to laugh without checking who was watching, until I caught myself writing emails in her tone of voice. And then one morning, I met Brooke. She brought coffee to a meeting I was attending for her division. I wasn't supposed to be there. Someone had dropped out last minute and I filled in. She wasn't dazzling like Claire, or powerful, or practiced. She was warm. She smiled like she meant it, and she laughed when I made a stupid joke about cold muffins. "Tell that to the muffins," I said. "They died bravely." She laughed. Not politely. Actually laughed. I hadn't made anyone laugh in years. It wasn't love at first sight. It wasn't cheating. Not then. But something inside me blinked awake, just for a moment. Like a match in a long tunnel. And for the first time in forever, I wanted more. I didn't even know her name at first. Just the woman with the coffee and the genuine smile. She sat in on a budget planning meeting I was forced into after a colleague caught the flu. I remember thinking how exhausted everyone looked. Tired suits, tired eyes, tired data on tired slides. Except her. She wore a faded maroon sweater that didn't match her heels. Her brown hair was pulled back in a loose bun, strands escaping like they couldn't stand being told what to do. I envied that about her immediately. I said something sarcastic under my breath when the room went dead silent during a technical issue. She laughed. I looked up, startled. "Sorry," she said, smiling. "That was funny. You just didn't expect an audience." And just like that, I felt seen. Not studied, not measured, just noticed. After the meeting, she passed me a coffee she hadn't finished. Medium roast, no cream. You look like someone who's not allowed to drink lattes in public. I blinked. Thanks. I usually don't." "Then consider this a rebellion." She grinned and walked off before I could respond. Later that day, I learned her name, Brooke. She worked in the marketing division, been there for 3 years, never missed a deadline, never caused a stir, just showed up, did her work, and somehow stayed human in a place designed to drain that out of people. I told myself not to think about her again. I told myself it was nothing. But over the next few weeks, we ran into each other more, in elevators, in break rooms, in overlapping hallway paths that never used to cross. She never flirted, never crossed a line, but her presence became grounding. She asked me questions that didn't feel like surveillance. "What do you do for fun?" I stared at her, genuinely confused. "Fun?" She tilted her head. "Yeah, like what's something you do that doesn't involve money or performance reviews?" I had no answer. She didn't laugh this time. She just nodded, like she understood too well. We started having lunch sometimes, in neutral spaces. She brought sandwiches. I brought awkwardness. She told me about her dog, Milo, how he was the only one who greeted her at the door like she was a miracle. I wanted to tell her that I couldn't remember the last time Claire looked at me that way, like I was anything but her curated accessory. One day I asked Brooke why she never transferred up. She had the skills, she had the numbers. She shrugged. "I like breathing room." And there it was again, that quiet, stubborn freedom that radiated from her. She didn't belong in my world. She didn't care about wine pairings or dinner parties or who was funding what. She cared about meaning, about dogs and rainy books and hiking trails that weren't on apps yet. She reminded me that a version of me still existed, somewhere under the scripts and the suits and the silence. And I hated how much I looked forward to seeing her. I started waking up earlier. I changed my route through the building just in case our paths crossed. I noticed the way she pushed her hair behind her ear when she was thinking. I noticed how she listened, not to respond, but to understand. One afternoon, I found her crying in the stairwell, silently, not heaving sobs, just silent tears on her cheeks. I didn't ask what was wrong. I just sat beside her. She didn't pull away. After a while, she whispered, "Some days are heavier than others." "Yeah," I said. "Some days feel like you're walking through wet cement." She looked at me. "Does your wife know how sad you are?" That was the first time anyone had said it out loud. Not tired, not stressed, not distracted, sad. I didn't answer, I couldn't. She didn't press. We sat in silence for a long time. Just two people pretending not to need each other. Two people carrying different weights in the same silence. That day changed something. After that, it wasn't just coffee and shared glances. It was texts. It was late-night calls about nothing. It was jokes no one else understood. It was healing, dangerously close to attachment. Still, nothing happened. Not physically. But in my mind, I had already crossed the line. By the time autumn crept in, I had mastered the choreography of deception. Leave the house at 7, coffee with Claire, suit, smile, silence, briefcase in hand, a kiss on the cheek she never lingered for, a quick scan of my tone, my mood, my eyes, then out the door. By 8, I was in the office. By 8:30, I had already found a reason to swing by marketing. Brooke never waited. She was always early, always working, always sipping coffee like it was her only vice. I used to sit in my office alone, staring at the wall. Now I found myself inventing excuses just to hear her voice. "I need insight on that ad proposal," I'd say. Or, "Can I borrow your brain for 5 minutes?" It was ridiculous, transparent. But she played along, and somehow, no one seemed to notice. No one, except Claire. She never confronted me, not yet. But I could feel it. The way her eyes lingered a bit too long when I checked my phone. The way she started asking who was in each meeting. She began casually dropping into my office unannounced, smiling, observing, sniffing for weakness like a predator with perfect posture. One night, as I stepped out of the shower, I found her sitting on the edge of the bed. "I've been thinking," she said, folding a silk robe over her legs. "We should renew our vows next spring." My stomach tightened. "That's unexpected." She tilted her head. "Is it? Married couples do it all the time, a way to refresh the bond, reconnect. Reconnect, like we'd ever connected in the first place." I nodded slowly. "Sure, if that's what you want." Her smile sharpened. "What I want, Jason, is for us to be aligned. I need to know we're still on the same team." She was watching me too carefully, like she already suspected I wasn't. I swallowed hard. "Of course we are." Later that week, I met Brooke for lunch. It wasn't planned. I just needed to be anywhere but home. I found her outside, under the faded awning of a cafe across from the park. She was reading some battered novel with a cracked spine. She looked up. "Bad day?" I sat down and sighed. "Bad year." She offered half her sandwich without asking, just handed it to me like it was the most natural thing in the world. We talked for over an hour. About nothing. About everything. She told me about her dad, how he used to fix cars, how he taught her that silence was sacred. She said her mother had died when she was young. She didn't cry when she said it, but her fingers trembled slightly. I told her about my childhood, about being raised by a father who taught me to work until I forgot what rest meant, about my sister, the only person who used to really know me before she moved 3 states away and stopped calling after Claire accidentally, left her off a guest list one too many times. Brooke listened, really listened. And then, something I wasn't prepared for happened. She reached across the table and touched my hand. Not a flirtatious move, not a seduction. It was comfort. Human, real, uncalculated comfort. But to me, it felt like fire. For a second, I didn't move. I let it burn. Then I pulled away, fast, like a criminal. Brooke's expression didn't change. She didn't apologize. She didn't retreat. "You don't have to be scared of being wanted," she said gently. "It doesn't make you bad." I looked away. My throat felt raw. "I'm married." "I know. That's not who I am. I'm not—" But the sentence died in my mouth. Because who was I really? A man who hadn't smiled in his own home in over 3 years? A husband who slept on the edge of his own bed just to breathe? I stood up too fast. My chair screeched. I mumbled an excuse. She didn't stop me. That night, Claire waited up for me. "Late call?" she asked, reclining in a silk nightgown, her face untouched by time. "Yeah, West Coast client." She looked at me for a long time, then nodded. "Next time, tell me first. I worry." It wasn't a request. I crawled into bed next to a woman I didn't love and dreamt about a woman I hadn't touched. I was no longer just a man trapped. I was a man lying to everyone, including himself. Claire wasn't the type to accuse. She preferred precision, strategy, clean execution. And so the trap didn't look like a trap. It looked like a board meeting. It started with an email. Jason, I'd like you to co-lead the McAllister account restructuring. We'll need marketing on board. I've looped in Brooke Chambers, lunch at Gray's, table for 3. Claire. Just like that. I stared at the screen, pulse accelerating. Brooke and Claire had never met. Their circles never overlapped. Until now. And Claire chose that moment, that account, and that restaurant. Gray's wasn't neutral. It was one of her curated spaces. Minimalist decor, soft jazz, silverware that weighed too much. The moment I walked into the restaurant, I knew. This wasn't a meeting. This was surveillance. Claire was already seated. Brooke arrived second. I was last, deliberately. Claire stood to shake her hand. "So you're Brooke," she said, as if greeting a character she'd read about in a script. Brooke smiled politely, unaware. "Yes, it's nice to finally meet you. Jason mentioned you have great instincts." Claire's eyes flicked toward me, unreadable. "He talks about me, does he?" Brooke hesitated, then smiled again. "Well, only good things." Claire nodded. "Of course." The meal went on in slow motion. Claire asked too many questions. Where Brooke lived, how long she'd worked here, what she did in her free time, all wrapped in sugar, but sharp underneath. Brooke, to her credit, handled it gracefully, but I saw it, the slight tension in her posture, the careful way she kept her hands folded in her lap. Her smile started to slip. And me? I just sat there, sweating beneath my expensive shirt, pretending I didn't want to vanish. Then came the dagger. "So, Jason," Claire said sweetly, swirling her wine, "you never told me how much time you've been spending on marketing projects lately. I thought your schedule was full." I froze. Brooke looked at me, confused. I gave her nothing. Claire went on. "You've always been so dedicated to your work. I admire that. It's rare to find someone so emotionally invested in their team." The word emotionally hung in the air like smoke. I tried to redirect. "The McAllister file needs both departments aligned, that's all." Claire smiled. "Of course, alignment. Such an important word in marriage too, wouldn't you say?" The silence was unbearable. After lunch, Claire kissed my cheek outside the restaurant, longer than necessary. "Thanks for coming, darling," she murmured. "It's good to meet your colleagues." Brooke walked off alone. I didn't follow. I couldn't. That night, Claire didn't bring it up. That was worse than if she had. She poured wine, lit candles, wore perfume I hadn't smelled in months. "Let's talk," she said. I nodded. She watched me for a long time. "I know when things shift, Jason. I know when energy moves." "I'm tired," I said. She ignored it. "Here's what I think. You're restless, and restless men make dangerous decisions." I swallowed hard. "You don't want to embarrass yourself or me, and I won't let you." There it was. Not a threat, a guarantee. The next morning, I found a printed itinerary on my desk. Couples retreat weekend at a wellness resort. Claire had already packed. I didn't argue. I didn't protest. At the retreat, she held my hand too tightly, introduced me to strangers as her rock, whispered rehearsed lines into my ear for the benefit of others. On paper, we were the image of high-functioning love, but at night, we slept like strangers on different sides of a war. Meanwhile, Brooke stopped texting, and I didn't blame her. I had dragged her into the lion's den without warning, let her sit across from a woman who could gut her without lifting a knife. I had failed her, but mostly, I had failed myself. The lie didn't come all at once. It trickled in, like water under a locked door. At first, I told myself it was temporary, that Brooke just needed space, that she would text, call, say something, but days passed, then a week. I tried to focus on work, tried to fall back into the rhythm Claire expected of me. Smiling, networking, responding on cue, but I was frayed, pulled thin, a ghost in a performance I had stopped believing in. One evening, as I sat on the balcony staring at the skyline, my phone buzzed. "Brooke, I shouldn't have touched your hand." I crossed a line. "I'm sorry." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Me, "You didn't. I should have said something. I just panicked. Please don't disappear." The dots blinked, then vanished. No reply. I didn't sleep that night. I kept hearing Claire's voice from the retreat. Restless men make dangerous decisions. She had known. Not guessed. Known. The next morning, she stood by the kitchen island holding a manila envelope. "Your quarterly investments came in," she said casually. "Want to review them together?" I didn't even look. "You handle it." She nodded. "I always do." Something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. Later that day, I left the office early. I told my assistant I had a migraine. That wasn't the lie. The lie came when I showed up at Brooke's apartment. It was the first time I'd been there. The building was old, but cared for. Her door had a small welcome mat with a cartoon dog and chipped paint on the frame. I knocked. Waited. Knocked again. Finally, the door opened a few inches. Her eyes widened. "Jason, what are you doing here? I needed to see you." She didn't move. "You can't just show up." "I know. I'm sorry, but Look, I just need 5 minutes. Then I'll go." She hesitated, then opened the door fully. The apartment was small, cozy, cluttered with books and plants. It smelled like cinnamon and candle wax. I stood awkwardly in the center of the room while she crossed her arms. "You shouldn't be here," she repeated. "I know, but I had to tell you something. The other day at the restaurant, I didn't know Claire would invite you. She was testing me. I figured. She's not stupid. She knows something's different. I think she's watching me." Brooke nodded slowly. "You didn't warn me." "I couldn't. It would have looked worse." "And now?" I stepped closer. "I'm losing it, Brooke. I don't know how to breathe in that house anymore." Her voice softened. "You don't have to live like this." And then came the lie. "I'm planning to leave her." The words came out before I could stop them. I don't know why I said it, maybe because I needed to believe it. Maybe because I needed her to believe it. She looked at me, carefully. "Are you?" "Yes." That was the moment everything shifted. She stepped forward slowly. Her hand brushed my arm. I didn't pull away. She looked up at me. "Then tell me when. A date, a plan, not just a dream." I hesitated. She saw it. "Jason," she whispered, "I won't be someone you visit when the weight gets heavy. Either you choose to live, or you choose to stay asleep." I nodded. "Soon, I swear." Another lie. Because the truth was, I didn't have a plan. No lawyer. No money separated. No leverage. Claire controlled the house, the accounts, even the legal documents for our foundation. I kissed Brooke on the forehead and left. And as I drove away, I hated myself for giving her hope I wasn't sure I could live up to. That night, Claire was waiting at home. She handed me a glass of wine, then leaned in and kissed my cheek. "You smell like cinnamon," she whispered. I froze. She walked away, humming to herself. I didn't sleep. Again. The unraveling didn't come with shouting. It came with silence. And then, paper. I came home 2 nights after seeing Brooke and found Claire in the study, seated behind the heavy walnut desk we never used. A contract lay open in front of her. Her posture was perfect, her expression unreadable. "Sit," she said. I obeyed. She pushed the document toward me. "This is a proposed amendment to our prenup, just a formality." I scanned the first page. Nothing looked familiar. "What's this about?" I asked. She smiled. "Revisions, protections, precautions." "Claire, I've always trusted you," she interrupted smoothly. "But people change. Circumstances shift. I've been advised to revisit a few things." I flipped further. Clauses on fidelity, confidentiality, asset forfeiture, control of foundation equity, and then, buried on page 6, a clause that stood out like blood on snow. Any romantic involvement outside the marriage will be considered material breach, resulting in full relinquishment of all marital assets, including but not limited to real estate, accounts, investments, and professional holdings managed jointly. I stared at the words. "You think I'm cheating?" I said, my voice low. "I think," she said, folding her hands, "that emotional infidelity is still infidelity. And I think if someone were foolish enough to jeopardize what we've built, they should feel the cost of that decision." "You've been spying on me." She didn't blink. "I've been protecting my interests. And yours." I stood, heart pounding. "You've lost your mind." Her voice didn't rise. Sign it, or don't. That's also a choice. I left the room without answering. My ears were ringing. That night, I sat in the dark of the guest room, the one I'd pretended I used for work calls, not because I hadn't slept beside her in months. I texted Brooke. I need to see you. Please. She didn't reply. The next morning, I opened my phone to a new message. Brooke. She came to see me. I froze. I called her immediately. She picked up after the third ring, her voice steady. She came to my office, said she wanted to clear the air. What did she say? I breathed. That she's your wife, that she knows you're confused, that you've been under pressure, and that it isn't my fault if you've blurred boundaries. She threatened you? Brooke exhaled. She didn't have to. She was surgical. I felt nauseous. She's trying to scare you off, I said. She doesn't have to try hard. There was silence. I believed you, Jason, Brooke said. When you said you were going to leave her, I waited. I wanted to believe I wasn't something ugly, but I can't be the thing you run to because you're too scared to run away. I meant it. No, she said softly. You meant to mean it. I closed my eyes. Please, don't disappear. I won't disappear, she said, but I'm done pretending this is love if it lives in the dark. The call ended. I sat there holding the phone like it could somehow reverse time. That day, I went home early. Claire was in the garden, trimming hedges with gloved hands. She looked serene, powerful. She didn't turn around when she said, "Did she cry?" I froze. Claire turned, smiling faintly. She always seemed soft. I assumed she cried. I don't know who you are anymore, I muttered. Oh, Jason, she said with a tilt of her head. I've always been like this. You just preferred the packaging. I went to the bedroom, shut the door, punched the wall hard enough to draw blood. There were two things left inside me, rage and something colder, resolve. She thought she had trapped me, but this time I wouldn't run. This time I'd start planning. I didn't hear from Brooke again for 3 days. The silence was louder than anything Claire ever said. It scraped at my ribs. I kept glancing at my phone, waiting for something, anything. But there was nothing left to say. She had drawn the line, and I had already crossed it, then hesitated on the wrong side. On the fourth morning, I found the envelope. No name, no return address, just my name, handwritten in ink. I opened it slowly, careful not to tear. Inside, one page. Jason, this isn't punishment, it's self-respect. I won't be a weapon in your war with her. I deserve to be chosen, not hidden. You're not a bad man, but you're not ready to be a free one either. Goodbye, Brooke. No signature, just space beneath the final word. Empty space that said more than the sentence ever could. I folded the letter slowly. My hands were shaking. She was gone, not dead, not moved, just done. The kind of gone that doesn't text you back in 6 months. The kind that doesn't wonder what you're doing late at night. The kind that leaves quietly because they already begged you not to make them. That night, Claire was in the living room, sipping wine, reading a novel she'd probably never finish. Her legs were curled under her like a portrait. The air smelled like the lavender oil she always used before social events. You seem off, she said without looking up. I'm tired. She closed the book. Of me? That was new. I didn't answer. She stood, walked over, and placed a hand on my chest. Don't make me regret choosing you, Jason. I stared at her. You didn't choose me, I said. You picked me like furniture. Her nails pressed slightly into my shirt. And you enjoyed being polished. Don't pretend you didn't. I stepped back. She tilted her head. You're not strong enough to leave me. You know that, right? I didn't respond, because part of me agreed. But part of me, the part that had grown teeth in silence, had started to disagree. The next morning, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Hey, I said when he answered. It's Jason. A pause. Then, didn't expect this call. I need a lawyer, I said. One that doesn't ask questions. The voice on the other end laughed dryly. You're finally getting out? I want to. I just don't know how. You do. You've always known. I met him that night in a dim bar on the edge of town, the kind of place Claire wouldn't be caught dead in. He brought documents, questions, plans. "You're in deep," he muttered, scanning the prenup I copied from Claire's files. "She built a fortress. Can you break it?" "I can dig tunnels, but you better be ready to crawl through dirt." "I am." When I got home, Claire was waiting in the kitchen. "Late night," she said, pouring tea. "Work meeting." She smiled. "Of course." She reached into the drawer and pulled out a folder, slid it across the counter. Inside, photos. Me, at Brooke's building, leaving her door, the timestamp in the corner, 2 days before the retreat. Claire sipped her tea. "Next time, use the service entrance." My heart sank. "You've been following me." "I've been protecting myself." I stayed quiet. "I haven't decided what to do with these," she said. "But I wanted you to know, there's no such thing as private anymore. Not for us." I nodded. "Then maybe it's time there's no such thing as us." She smiled faintly. "Let's see if you mean that." I went upstairs and sat in the dark. Brooke was gone. Claire was watching, and I had just lit the fuse. I didn't know how long the wire was, but it was burning now. I didn't shave for 3 days. I stopped going to the office. I stopped answering messages. I told my assistant I was working remote, but really, I just sat in the guest room surrounded by boxes of old things I hadn't looked at in years. Pictures from before Claire, receipts from places I used to eat, a notebook from a backpacking trip I barely remembered. My body felt heavy, like grief, but not for a person, for myself. I had the lawyer's plan now, a blueprint. He called it the long dig. Nothing dramatic, no slamming doors, quiet transfers, silent documentation, a whisper of separation, paper by paper, like bleeding out with your shirt still buttoned. But every time I picked up the phone to start the process, I froze. Not because I was afraid of Claire, but because I didn't recognize the man holding the phone. Who was I now? A liar? A coward? A husband in name only? A man who broke a woman's heart while letting another woman break his? Brooke had left me with dignity. Claire had left me with ownership. I didn't belong to myself anymore. One night, I walked to the kitchen just before dawn. The city was quiet. Claire wasn't home. Some charity event, she'd said. Or maybe she just didn't care to lie anymore. I poured a glass of scotch I didn't want, just to feel something. And then I did something I hadn't done in over 5 years. I cried, silently, no sobbing, just tears falling like they had been waiting their turn. The kind of crying that doesn't make a sound because the grief is too old, too deep, too tired. I sat on the floor and let it happen. For an hour, maybe more. When I finally got up, I felt empty, but clean. Like something had finally died. The next morning, I called the lawyer again. "It's time," I said. He didn't ask questions, just gave me the next step. We started with an alternate bank account. I used an old P.O. box for the address. I transferred just enough to stay under Claire's radar. Small bites, consistent, patient. Next came document copies, titles, deeds, tax records. I scanned everything Claire had stashed in her home office. She never suspected. She thought I was broken, and in a way, I was. But now, that break had become a door. I reached out to a financial advisor through my lawyer, off the record. He walked me through the blind spots, the ways Claire had wrapped her name around my life like a noose. "I've seen worse," he said, "but not often." I worked quietly. No mistakes, no sudden movements. But something strange started happening. Claire changed. Not drastically, just a tone shift. She became softer, more domestic. She cooked more, asked about my sleep, watched old movies with me on the couch. She was playing a new card, nostalgia, and for a moment, a brief, bitter moment, it worked. We sat on the sofa one night watching a film I used to love. She rested her head on my shoulder like she hadn't since our 2nd anniversary. I felt her hand on mine. "I remember this," she whispered. "So do I said quietly. She kissed me, slowly, carefully, like someone sealing an envelope. Afterward, she looked at me. "Let's reset. Let's start over. I can be better." I wanted to scream, not because of the offer, but because part of me wanted it. Not her, not the manipulation, just the lie, the safety of a controlled illusion. I stood up. "It's too late." She stared at me. "Too late for what?" "For pretending this was ever real." She sat very still. Then, You really think you're strong enough to leave me? I didn't answer, because strength wasn't the question anymore. It was survival. The letter arrived folded inside a paperback. No envelope, no return address. Just a book, Brooke's favorite one, The Bell Jar by Plath. It sat inside my mailbox like it had always belonged there. The cover was creased, the spine familiar. I didn't have to open it to know what was inside, but I did. The note was tucked between pages 80 and 81, written on the back of an old concert ticket stub. Jason, I thought I'd hate you forever, but I don't. I just miss the version of you that laughed, that asked questions, that made stupid jokes about burnt toast and cold muffins. I know now that loving you didn't make me foolish. Believing you could free yourself, that was my mistake. Still, I hope you do. Even if I'm not there to see it. Brooke, no signature again, just ink, just paper. I held the note for a long time, not crying, not broken, but fueled. I put the book in the top drawer of my desk and locked it. Claire was out for the evening again, some event, or maybe just giving me space to crumble. She'd stopped pressuring me lately. That worried me more than anything. That night, I went into her study. She thought it was locked. It wasn't. Claire always underestimated old hinges and quiet hands. I took photos of everything, documents, passwords, foundation contracts, names of people she'd been meeting with. Some weren't clients, some were private investigators. She was preparing too. The next morning, I met with my lawyer. She's gearing up, I told him. She's not just playing defense anymore. He nodded. Then we strike first. We expedited the filings. Everything would move slowly by law, but the point was to begin. I didn't tell Claire. I didn't have to. She knew. A week later, she brought home a gift. A navy blue tie, silk, Italian, my favorite. Thought you'd wear this for the Langston Gala, she said sweetly. We'll be photographed. I'm not going. Her smile cracked just slightly. Why not? I filed for separation. Silence. Total, complete silence. She stood still, holding the tie in midair like it had turned to stone. Excuse me? You heard me. She walked toward me slowly. What are you talking about? I'm done, Claire. Her laugh was sharp and humorless. You think it's that easy? No, I said. I know exactly how hard it will be, but it's happening. She threw the tie at me. You ungrateful bastard. Then her voice dropped. You think you're the first man to fantasize about escape? You think that makes you noble? You'll crawl back the moment you feel real pain. I said nothing. You'll lose everything, she hissed. I'll make sure of it. I already lost the one thing that mattered. She stared at me, blinking. Brooke, I said. She was the only thing that felt real, and I lost her because I was too afraid of you. Claire's face didn't move, but her hands curled. And you think that makes you brave now, standing here after months of deception? I think it makes me late, I said, but not lost. She stepped back. You'll pay for this. I already am. She stormed out, slammed the bedroom door. The next morning her closet was empty. She hadn't moved out. Not permanently. It was a message, one I understood clearly. War had officially begun. Claire didn't return for 2 days. No calls, no texts, no notes. The silence wasn't peace, it was positioning. I knew her too well. This wasn't surrender. This was retreat before a strike. And I was right. On the 3rd day, I got a call from Marcus, the one friend I had left, a former colleague who Claire always accidentally forgot to invite to anything important. Meet me, he said, voice low. Outside the old library, no phones. I hadn't seen Marcus in nearly a year. When I arrived, he was leaning against the stone wall, hood up like someone in a spy film. He looked tired, nervous. The kind of nervous that comes from knowing something and wishing you didn't. What is it? I asked. He handed me a manila envelope. Someone sent this to me anonymously. I almost ignored it, but you need to see it. I opened it. Inside were photos. Dozens. Claire. With someone else. Not just walking or having coffee. Touching. Leaning in. His hand on her waist. Her lips on his. It wasn't recent. Some were dated 2 years ago. Some even older. Who is he? I asked. Marcus shook his head. He works in lobbying, government contracts. His name's Reed Baxter. I swallowed hard. I'd heard that name before. He donated to our foundation once. Claire said he was a friend of her father's. That was 2 years ago. I kept flipping through the photos, like if I reached the end it would somehow undo the beginning. Claire had been cheating, not just emotionally, not just once. And the worst part? She planted traps for me while sleeping in another man's bed. I couldn't breathe. Marcus placed a hand on my shoulder. Whoever sent it, they wanted you to know, before she destroyed you completely. My knees felt weak. I had been burning my life down trying to escape her while she had already left. I got home that night and sat in the dark. The photos spread out across the floor. Claire walked in just after 8, heels clicking like a gavel. You redecorated, she said, seeing the mess. I looked up slowly. You could have just told me. She didn't flinch. Told you what? I held up one photo. You think I'm a coward? You were cheating on me for years while treating me like I was the traitor. She sighed. I was surviving, Jason. Do you know what it's like being married to a man who doesn't exist outside of suits and silence? I stood. You rewired my entire life. You made sure I had no one. You fed me the same poison you were drinking behind closed doors. She took a step closer. You think Reed mattered? He was a distraction. You were always the plan. No, I said. I was the image, the project. She smiled sadly. That's all anyone is, Jason. We just call it love to make it prettier. I filed already, I said. It's done. Her eyes narrowed. Do you think this changes anything? It changes everything. She knelt and picked up a photo. You want to go public with this? Be my equal in destruction? We'll both be ruins. Maybe, I said, but I'd rather be ruins than your prisoner. She rose slowly. You're going to regret this. Maybe. She turned to leave. At the door, she paused. You know, he wanted me to leave you, years ago, but I didn't. Why? She glanced back, her voice cold. Because I liked watching you drown. Then she was gone, and I was left surrounded by proof. Proof that love, in the wrong hands, becomes cruelty in pearls. I didn't sleep that night. I laid out the photos like puzzle pieces across the dining table. I didn't feel rage, not anymore. Rage was too clean. This was something heavier, a kind of calculated coldness, the quiet breath you take before cutting your own leash. At 6 a.m., I called my lawyer. I have photos, proof, affairs, dates. He whistled softly. Good, that'll change the power dynamic. She admitted it. Even better. We met that afternoon. I handed over everything. He looked through the folder with professional detachment, but I saw the glint in his eye. This is leverage, he said. She built the prenup to destroy you if you cheated, but she never assumed we'd find this. What can we do? We go offensive. We drafted a public relations strategy, not for tabloids, but for protection. In our world, reputation meant currency. The foundation Claire and I co-managed had sponsors, politicians, high-profile donors. We didn't need to shout. We just needed whispers in the right ears. I'll need a statement, my lawyer said. Something personal, controlled, not bitter, just honest. I can do that. And Jason, he said carefully, you need to be ready. When this hits, she will retaliate. With everything. I know. Over the next few days, I closed every back door. I moved the remainder of my funds to the protected account. I changed the passwords to anything still legally mine. I revoked shared access to documents she never touched anyway. I took meetings with advisors, signed disclosures, prepared for depositions. I cut contact with anyone who reported to Claire or had ever worked directly under her. And then I met with Marcus. You sure about this? He asked. I need someone who saw it, I said. Someone who can say, under oath, that she was with Reed before I ever stepped outside the marriage. Marcus looked down at his coffee. She'll come for me. I'll protect you. He nodded. You always were a bad liar, man, but I'll do it. I didn't thank him. Not with words. Just a long look between men who understood what it meant to burn a bridge and stand still as the ash buried your shoes. Claire didn't reach out again. Not until the documents were filed officially. She showed up at my apartment, a temporary rental my lawyer helped arrange. I hadn't told her where I moved. She must have used her usual methods. I opened the door and stood in the frame. She looked flawless. Black coat, red lips, no emotion. "You look thinner," she said. "You look like someone who's lost control." She smiled faintly. "I let you go. You think that makes you powerful?" "No," I said, "but it makes me free." She pulled something from her purse. A flash drive. "Here." "What is it?" "A full confession of everything. Emails, dates, photos. Me and Reed. If you're going to kill me publicly, I want it to be clean." I didn't reach for it. She added, "I'm not giving you this because I'm guilty. I'm giving it because I'm tired." I finally took it. She stared at me. "I loved you, in my way." "I know. And you?" she asked. "Did you ever love me?" I looked at her, and for the first time I didn't hesitate. "No. I loved the version of myself I thought I had to be to deserve you, but that wasn't love. That was fear dressed in ambition." She didn't argue. She turned and left. No threats, no final words. Just the click of heels echoing into nothing. The invitation read, "Langston Foundation Annual Gala, an evening of purpose." Claire still signed it as Chairwoman Claire Wexley. She hadn't dropped my name from the materials. That was intentional. A signal. A dare. I called Marcus. "She's baiting me. She's used to performing with you beside her," he said. "Take the stage one last time, just not the way she expects." I showed up at the event in a charcoal suit, no tie. Polished, clean, but not hers. The venue was opulent. Chandeliers, glass floors, ice sculptures molded into meaningless elegance. All the faces I'd once shaken hands with. People who knew our marriage was a brand before it was ever a bond. Claire stood at the center of the reception like a queen who had never heard of losing. She looked stunning. Tailored dress, sleek hair, perfect posture, but I saw it. A flicker in her eyes, a calculation. She hadn't expected me to come. "Jason," she said as I approached, her voice the perfect volume for public ears, "I'm glad you made it." "You didn't really think I'd let you own the finale," I said, smiling for the crowd. She clinked her glass gently against mine. "Still dramatic?" "No," I said. "Now I'm honest." We posed for the usual photos, greeted donors, shook hands with people who pretended not to know we were both knives behind a smile. After dinner, Claire took the stage. Her speech was flawless, passionate, articulate, emotional in the ways she had perfected. I watched from the edge of the ballroom. She thanked me publicly, my partner in vision and legacy, and gestured toward me with a rehearsed softness. The crowd applauded. Then it was my turn. I didn't prepare a script. I didn't need one. I walked to the mic and looked out at the room, then at her. "Tonight marks a transition," I said. "Not just for the foundation, but for me." I paused, let the quiet settle. "Many of you have seen me beside Claire for the better part of the last decade. We've built something meaningful, and while this journey has been instructive, some paths are meant to diverge." There were murmurs. Claire's smile froze. "I will be stepping down from my role at the foundation," I continued. "Effective immediately. I'm pursuing other ventures, new chapters." I could see her trying not to react, her knuckles white against the podium. "And I want to thank you," I said, scanning the room, "not for your trust in us, but for reminding me who I used to be." I stepped away. Applause came, hesitant and uneven. Claire followed me backstage. "You're walking away tonight?" "I walked away the moment you started calling it love while loving someone else." "You just humiliated me." "No," I said. "I gave you a standing ovation. You've always wanted the last word. Tonight I gave it to you in front of your audience." She laughed, but it cracked. "You think this ends here?" "It already did." Outside, I found Marcus waiting by the valet. He handed me a small envelope. "Courier delivered this to your lawyer. From her. Again." I opened it in the car. Inside was a check, made out to Brooke, $75,000. Memo line, apology. I stared at it. Marcus frowned. "What is this?" "She's closing books," I said. "Buying silence, or peace." He nodded slowly. "You gonna send it?" I stared out the window. "No." Brooke doesn't want money. She wanted a man who would choose her. Marcus handed me an old lighter from the glove compartment. Without a word, I set the check aflame and dropped it into the steel ashtray. We drove in silence, one performance left. And then, maybe, nothing. But it would be mine. It was raining the morning the divorce was finalized. The court hearing was quick. Claire didn't show. Just her lawyer. Polished, empty, clinical. No theatrics, just signatures and silence. I walked out of the courthouse with a pen in my pocket and a manila folder in my hand. That was it. 6 years of a marriage that looked perfect on paper, erased in under 30 minutes. No cameras, no press, no drama, just the soft patter of rain on pavement. I sat in a coffee shop across from the courthouse, still in my suit, the folder resting on the table like an artifact. No one noticed me. No one cared. And maybe that was the most peaceful thing I'd felt in years. I thought I'd cry. I expected it. Not for Claire, but for Brooke. For what I destroyed before I ever had the courage to fight for it. But I didn't. I stirred my coffee slowly, watched the swirl of cream vanish. I couldn't cry, because grief needs innocence, and mine had been burned away in 1,000 quiet compromises. I had cried once, weeks ago in that guest room when no one could see me. Now I just felt clear, like a man standing at the end of a road with no map and no one waiting, and still, somehow, not lost. Later that day, I walked through the park, the one near the office, the one Brooke used to eat lunch in when she needed quiet. I sat on the same bench we once shared, the same one where she handed me half a sandwich and told me I didn't have to live like this. That memory didn't hurt anymore. It didn't burn. It just lived inside me. Quietly. A woman pushing her daughter on a swing walked by. A man jogged past with headphones. Life kept happening. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the old concert stub Brooke had written on, the one from inside the bell jar. I read it again, softly. I hope you do, even if I'm not there to see it. I folded it and slipped it into my wallet, behind my driver's license, because some truths belong closest to your name. When I got home that evening, my real home now, a small apartment above a bookstore with no doormen, no marble floors, no curated flowers, I made dinner, by myself. Real food, nothing catered, nothing plated for appearance. I sat at the table, alone, and I smiled, not because I had won, but because I had finally stopped playing. After dinner, I checked my email. There was one unread message, from Brooke. Subject. No subject. I stared at it for 5 full minutes before opening it. Hi, I heard, through a friend. I'm not reaching out for anything. Just wanted you to know. I'm glad. That's all. B, no attachments, no signature, no questions. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then, for the first time since the night I left Claire, I felt the sting behind my eyes. But still, I couldn't cry, not because it didn't hurt, but because healing, real healing, is quiet. And it doesn't come with a breakdown. It comes with a choice, and I'd already made mine.